I'm Dr. Deb Butler, and you are listening to Thinner Peace and Menopause and Beyond. This is episode number 505. Well, hello, all my dear friends all over the world. It's wonderful if you're seeing me or if you're just hearing me. You can see me on YouTube at Dr. Deb Butler, or you can listen wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and you can hear the audio portion. Either way, I have some outstanding information that I want to give to you today that I've been thinking about a lot. But first of all, I want to welcome any new listeners that are here that have never listened before. This is for you too. And if you've never heard any other podcast of mine, my episodes, this will be just perfect for you. And if you're a longtime listener of mine, this is perfect for you because I have never talked about this topic before, but I hear about it a lot and I don't respond when people talk to me about intuitive eating. So, a lot of people, and a lot of times when I'm interviewed, because I've been doing a lot of interviews lately, a lot of the people that are interviewing me are just equating what I do with intuitive eating. And actually, I don't think they're the same thing. So I want to explain to you the difference because intuitive eating has been around for a long time. And I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I am saying that it's not the same thing as the thinner peace process that I created is. It's different. So what I want to do is go over a little bit about what they both are, how they're different, and then by the end of this podcast, maybe you'll have a better decision of which way you want to go, especially because the holidays are coming, or the holidays are here, I should say. They seem like they came very fast, but it seems like the older I get, the faster they come. I don't know what you think. And I just spent Thanksgiving in Sedona, Arizona, which was really a magical time. And I was with my son and my daughter. She's my daughter-in-law, but I call her my daughter. And her parents, which are like my best friends, and my grandchildren. And even in that scenario, when it came to eating, it was interesting just to watch myself, how I came about, like how I go about eating when it's a celebratory meal and there's people and there's a lot of talking and there's good food and there's all these things that are going on in the mind. How do you want to approach this next holiday? Because the way I look at these holidays, I look at them as master classes, meaning that they are a classroom for you to learn more about yourself if you're willing to look at it that way. So there may be certain people that you're going to see that you know trigger you. There may be certain people that you can't wait to see that don't trigger you, so they're not going to be your teachers. Your teachers are going to be the ones that seem to instigate some sort of negative reaction inside of you that makes you do something negative, either say something or do something negative to yourself. And it seems like these holidays or master classes tend to bring that up more than any other time. So I think this is a really great time to put to use my thinner peace process and also to explain to you the difference of intuitive eating and my thinner peace process while you're going through these master classes and these holidays are coming up. Because so much more food is usually involved in these holidays, and so is a lot of people. So whichever seems to get you going the most, this is going to be for you. But I want you to think about when you think about my thinner peace process, it's the inner peace process. And I think that if you want to be thinner, and I know some of you do, and some of you are maybe thin in your own mind or what the scale says, but you're not at peace with food at all. Because I've actually worked with a lot of women who are okay with the number on the scale, but they are not okay with what they have to do and how they view food in order to keep the number at the scale. So there's a lot of fear involved. So when I talk about the inner peace or thinner peace process, I'm talking about a way of how to become more peaceful inside yourself and how to become more peaceful with food. And I think peace with food, when you can have peace with food, if you've never had it before, is probably the most freeing thing there is. And I think that's what most of my clients, all my private clients, what they really want is they just want to be peaceful around food. They don't want to be thinking about it all the time. And they also want to feel and think that they can eat whatever they want. And I want to talk about that a little bit before I get into intuitive eating about this thought of I can eat whatever I want. Because in intuitive eating and in the thinner peace process, I like, I think we both want to use those thoughts that I can eat whatever I want. But also, I have used that thought anytime that I thought I wasn't on a diet, that I could eat whatever I want. And what that meant to me is that I could eat all the foods that I normally would not allow myself to eat if I was on a diet. And I usually pick foods that I would never eat. And I disconnected from my body in terms of was I full? Was I hungry? All I wanted to do was to get all these foods in, thinking I could eat whatever I want until I gained too much weight and I had to stop doing that. So, in the thinner peace process and in intuitive eating, we both talk about the idea of being able to eat whatever you want, but I think I refer to it a little bit differently. And that's what I want to talk about today is that difference and what is the difference between intuitive eating and the thinner peace process. So, like the core philosophy for thinner peace is that it's a mindset and an emotional management system. It focuses on why you eat and not just what you eat. In fact, it focuses much more on why you eat than what you eat. And it also teaches you to allow urges instead of reacting to them. And urges are these urgent desires that we feel in our bodies that are created by thoughts in our head, such as, I'll never eat this again, or it's the holidays, so I can do whatever I want, ignoring your body and letting those urges just run through you and giving into them. And in the last podcast I did, I talked about your urges and your primal brain like a screaming toddler and giving into it all the time. And the more you give into a screaming toddler, the more screaming the toddler does. The more you give into your urges, the more urges you're going to have. So urges are a very important component of the thinner peace process. And I don't think it is at all a component in intuitive eating. Almost, it seems to me like if you have an urge to want to eat something in intuitive eating, you eat it. And I think we have to use that upper part of our brain or the smarter part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, to help us decide what to eat too, not just our primal brain. So, in the thinner peace process, it's all about rewiring the brain to reduce food noise. Now, food noise is a really interesting concept because we're using it a lot with all the new medications that are coming out, and all the people that are using them and all the experts and research that are talking about it are talking about how it cuts out the food noise. I think the thinner peace process does the same thing without putting anything into your body. It's just using your brain in a different way. So, the key components of the thinner peace process is the awareness of the primal brain or the primitive brain. It's allowing urges without acting on them, allowing these urgent desires that think you have to eat something to actually not act on them like a screaming toddler. And also planning from your prefrontal cortex sometimes about what you're going to be eating, because you also can be educated to figure out what is best for your body and what works for your body. And so it's also about building the peaceful eater identity. I really love that. The peaceful eater identity. I love the idea that I feel free around food and then I feel peaceful. Like it doesn't really matter to me what kind of food is around me. It doesn't talk to me. It doesn't call me. And, when I'm working with my private clients, I have so many of them. And even you, when you write me letters, talk to me about how food calls you. And what I always say in my response is food can't talk, but your brain can. And that is what you have to manage. So, the main goals about the thinner peace process is emotional freedom around food, fewer urges and less mental chatter, and weight loss as a natural result of alignment. It's calm, it's steady, and it's deliberate eating habits. That's the thinner peace process. Now, intuitive eating, its philosophy isn't that different from the thinner peace process in terms of it's a non-diet framework. There is no diet mentality within the thinner peace process, but there is planning using the upper brain or your prefrontal cortex. In the core philosophy of intuitive eating, you're listening to internal signals, hunger, fullness, and satisfaction, which is very, very similar to the thinner peace process in terms of eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. I think that's very, very important in both, and I agree with the core philosophy on both of them. Intuitive eating removes all food rules in dieting, and weight loss is not a goal. So it rejects the diet mentality, it honors hunger and fullness, and it makes peace with all foods. It's gentle nutrition and body respect. So that you can see as I'm talking about them, there are some similarities between the two processes. It does help you restore trust in your body signals, but it really doesn't help you deal with the urges, even though it can help you with binge and restrict cycles. So, where they overlap and how they're the same is, as I said, we both reject a diet mentality. We're both promoting food peace. We're both encouraging listening to the body, and we're both talking about reducing guilt, drama, and chaos around food. But once again, what I want to talk about most importantly is how they differ. So, for instance, intuitive eating doesn't have a weight loss focus, but thinner peace, weight loss can be a goal through emotional and mental alignment. In other words, weight loss can be the side effect of being connected to your body. So it may not be the goal, but it may be the side effect of the connection or the reconnection of listening to your body. So another difference is intuitive eating responds to cues to give permission to eat. And in thinner peace, we allow urges and we retrain the brain to reduce the food noise. So we don't respond to all cues or urges. Oh, I feel like this, or I want this, or that looks good, or I want something sweet. All of those thoughts in the thinner peace process, those are thoughts that we look at to question because they're usually coming from the primal brain and they're creating these feelings in your body that we call urges. And I feel that when you can allow an urge, feel an urge, and not give into it is when you will feel powerful and at peace with food. The structure of intuitive eating is it's flexible, it's moment to moment decisions. And in the thinner peace process, there's more intentional planning from the higher brain. In other words, I really, really encourage using that prefrontal cortex. But I also encourage the connection into your body so that there is communication going on all the time. Because sometimes your prefrontal cortex knows and is educated as to what's best for your body, and you can learn from it. Like we educate ourselves so that we can become healthier. We don't just know all the time what to do. But the more that we don't give in to urges and we eat foods that are more fuel like in the thinner peace process, there's fuel foods and there's joy foods. And of course, in the thinner peace process, I encourage more fuel eating, but I also encourage joy eating too, which means eating a non nutritious food, a food that has no nutritious value that you just enjoy, but you learn how to be mindful about eating it. You use that meditative part of your brain, that observer part of your brain, to really be able to enjoy these foods because the only reason you're eating them is to enjoy them. When it comes to emotional eating, intuitive eating explores emotional triggers, but in Thinner Peace, it's deep emotional processing and thought work. In other words, we're really looking at what our minds are telling us, what these thoughts are creating in terms of urges, and really being aware of how we're thinking about ourselves and how we're thinking about food. And I think, like in intuitive eating is very behavior focused, but in Thinner Peace, it's identity first. Who am I becoming? Because even when I started this process 15 years ago and I was still a chiropractor, part of the reason I could segue over into life coaching and learn something totally new was because I stopped giving into urges of eating and drinking, which I could feel was, I could say maybe was intuitive, that, oh, I just wanted a drink or, oh, I just really wanted to eat that. But in reality, they were urges. And as long as I was having these urges to eat and drink, I couldn't respond to the actual emotions of frustration and disappointment in my career because I wasn't looking at them. So in the thinner peace process, it's about looking at the emotions and the emotional holes that you're trying to fill with food and use those emotions to give you more of what you want, especially in the second half of your life. So, who benefits from each? Well, you can benefit from either. But I think in the thinner peace process, the people who benefit the most are people with emotional eating patterns who are used to filling emotional holes with food, who are filling instead of feeling, those who want weight loss without dieting, and anyone wanting structure and mindset tools, because the thinner peace process actually has specific tools that you use to help you manage your mind and help you manage your mind around food. So, how they can work together, intuitive eating builds body trust. Thinner peace adds emotional mastery. Together, freedom plus intention plus peace. There's nothing wrong with that. Both aim for food peace, just through different paths. So I don't know, what sounds better to you? The intuitive way or the thinner peace way? I hope this podcast has helped you understand the difference between the two. The thinner peace process is not intuitive eating, and intuitive eating is not the thinner peace process. But the thinner peace process is so much more about retraining your brain. And it's also about really being able to become the observer of your own mind in terms of what you're thinking and the results that you're getting. It's very much a mind management program. And it also works very, very much, especially the reason I love it so much is because it helps you use food to understand what's going on in your mind. That is the thinner peace process. So, I'm interested in what you think about all this. Please feel free to send me an email at drdeb@drdebbutler.com. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you've thought about this before. The main thing is about the thinner peace process and the work that I do, especially around the holidays, is to help you see what gives you emotional holes. In other words, holes that you think food will make feel better. So in thinner peace, there's a big difference between eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. And that is a process all in itself, which is more similar to intuitive eating. But after that, it changes very much because when you start eating when you're not hungry, That's when the thinner piece process really kicks in and really helps you understand yourself better in terms of why you're eating when you're not hungry, what your brain is telling you, and what is it that you really, really want that you're covering up by eating. So listen, before I end this podcast, I would never end without saying to you, because you know what I'm going to say is that no matter where you go or what you do, please, please, please be very, very kind to yourself, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye. I'm really excited to offer a masterclass during the masterclass season. I've been talking all about the masterclass of the holidays, of how you're going to learn the people that make you react the most, the foods that get you wanting to eat more than what you need. Those are all part of your teachers in the class or the master class of the holidays. So, what I'm doing is I'm actually offering a master class on the master class. So, if you're interested in joining, it's going to be free and it's going to be 2 days. And you can find out all this information by going to drdebbutler.com/holiday. And you can sign up for my free masterclass to help you with your masterclass during the holidays. I hope to see you there.